get started, I thank all of you who arrived early and pre-registered online today. That helps us streamline the process for class registration big time. So welcome to Come Grow With Us. This is Oregon's Constant Gardener's educational class series. My name is Erika Winters, and I'm the Community Outreach Director and lead garden consultant here for Constant Gardener. So welcome to the Art of Watering. I'm really excited to run this class. When I first started developing the outline, I feared I wouldn't get a good turnout. Who wants to learn how to splash water on plants? And then as I started developing the outline, I realized this could easily be a 3-hour seminar when you start getting into the nuances of not only water quality and dissolved oxygen content, but different watering techniques and applications as well. So we got a lot to cover today. I want to start with just a few brief announcements. Again, thank you for everyone who registered online last Monday. That gives me a full week to put in all of my purchase orders for the materials for this class. I don't want to discourage anyone from adding late if your schedule does free up. So I do over-order materials, but I strongly encourage that if you do know your schedule in advance, that you confirm a week prior. It helps me out big time. I also had a request from one of our students to do away with the waiver and maybe try to find an electronic version. I'm working on that with our lawyers and our website developers, so there might be an easier way so we don't all have to waste that paper on the day of the class. I appreciate you bearing with me in the meanwhile, and I have reformatted it to a half sheet so we can save at least 50% more trees. So thanks for bearing with me through that process. And lastly, these classes will now be videotaped, courtesy of Bill, so we're very, very appreciative to have this opportunity to push our message and our education further. Does anyone have any questions about video footage or registration or materials? All right, well then we'll dive right into the art of watering. I like to share with people this analogy from sushi chefs in Japan. They're required to study the art of cooking rice for 1 year before they're even allowed to touch raw fish. And for me, that connects back so strongly with the art of watering, because this is the foundation of everything that we're doing for plant health. And 9 out of 10 beginner gardeners generally get this a little wrong. So today my goal is to give the beginner a lot of good foundational information and the intermediate or advanced gardener some fine nuances and go over some industry debates so we can all get on the same page about best watering practices. And I always like to start by meeting our class. So I want to go around and just hear a little bit about everybody's watering practices to start with. So if you'll say your name, if you feel comfortable, or a nickname, and share with us whether you hand water, have a hydroponic system, use auto irrigation or drip, whatever formation that you use. And then if you like to water deeply and infrequently, or if you're the type of gardener that likes to water very frequently but shallow to push more nutrients through, just to get a sense of where everybody's at. So I'll go ahead and start. Again, my name is Erika Winters, and I am a hand waterer whenever possible. And I do like to water deeply and infrequently, both to promote strong root development down below and to give me a couple days off between waterings. So let's start here and we'll go around the room.
And water, like to go heavy, but dry up a little bit.
We do have I'm Emily, and I guess I frequently water my plants.
Just water.
Great, thank you. And as we go over the different watering techniques towards the end of today's class, we'll talk about the different pros and cons of each style. So let's dive into our agenda real briefly here. So we're going to talk a little bit about water quality and oxygen. Of course, these are paramount to everything. We'll go into chlorine versus chloramine, talk a little bit about pH versus parts per million. We'll talk about different watering cans and irrigation options very briefly. That would be a whole topic in and of itself. I'm going to teach you the lift the pot and chopstick methods, if you don't already know them, of learning when your plants have dried out. And then we'll also talk about water, fertilizer recipes, timelines, and flushing practices. If I have time, I have so much to squeeze in today, I wanted to share with you guys what the bone meal pancake looks like and how to remedy that if you're hammering your plants with liquid bone meal. So hopefully we'll get to that at the end. And then of course we'll conclude with the most common mistakes as far as watering practices go. So first up, most folks are in one of two boats. You're on city water or you're on well water. Can I get a show of hands on how many people are on well water here? Yeah. So maybe about 30% of the room, and how many folks are on city water? All right. You
I have a
Springfield? You have a spring. I'm jealous. Very nice. And then Springfield, Junction City, Eugene, kind of a mishmash of all of the above? Okay, great. So I did have time before the class to check in with all those utility boards to find out a little bit more about the debate between chlorine and chloramine. Does anybody know the difference between the two compounds? Does anybody know if we have chloramine in our water in Lane County? So we don't, is the good news. So the main difference between chlorine and chloramine, chloramine is chlorine plus ammonia. So it is way more persistent and way more toxic. Yeah, it takes about 3 times the remediation steps to get rid of chloramine as it does to get rid of chlorine. But I've checked in with EWEB, SUB, the Springfield Board, Rainbow, and Junction City, and we do not put chlorine in our water anywhere in the local area. So this is good news. I have given you all a few resources on your handout about how to go through chloramine dissipation if that ever comes up for you. So the main difference as far as gardening practices, what's important to us is chlorine gas can volatilize or evaporate or dissipate. We can get it out of our water in a timely fashion before we actually put it in the soil. So does anybody know the problem with having chlorinated water, specifically in an organic gardening scenario?
Kill the good bugs.
Pardon?
Kill the good bugs.
Exactly, thank you. The answer was it kills the good bugs, your micro and macrobiology in the soil. It's incredibly important to maintain that if you're an organic gardener, absolutely. So it's really easy. Does anybody know how to get rid of chlorine? Let the water turn. Agitation? Aeration? Absolutely. Yeah, and for everyone in the back, is this too loud or is sound okay here? I like that gentle hum in the background. So yeah, right now I'm aerating this bucket of water and I'm agitating it in the process. Some people also throw a stir pump or a circulation pump in the bottom. That pump is not connected to any kind of tubing, it just freely recirculates at the bottom. And again, that agitation is really helpful because you're able to smash molecules and increase that volatilization process. A farmer once taught me if you're on city water and you have to irrigate out of a chlorinated hose, if you can hit a reservoir, rather than, how many do this? I put my hose on the very bottom and let it quietly fill to the top. Does anyone else do that when filling a reservoir? So that's going to slow down your dechlorination process. It'll take a little more labor, but if you can stand there and shoot it at the side aggressively, you're breaking up those molecules and you're speeding up that dechlorination process. So it's really important. There's a very complicated equation that takes temperature, surface area, and ppms of chlorine content to actually estimate the amount of time it would take to dechlorinate. I'm not a physicist, I can't offer that to y'all today. There are resources online if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. But generally speaking, if it's a 5 to 55 gallon reservoir, you can achieve dechlorination within a couple hours on the 5-gallon side to about 24 hours on the 55-gallon side. And of course there are chlorine tests if you want to guarantee that you've achieved the results you're looking for. So on your handout, you're going to see a lot of resources. I'm not going to go into too much today, but there are ways of letting it sit out, or boiling it, or adding vitamin C, or Camden tablets to help speed up that process.
Oh, really? Nice.
So I want to segue a little bit into dissolved oxygen, but first I'm going to need a volunteer. Can I get one person from the audience? Michael? All right, so this is going to come into play a little later in today's class, but I just want to share with you the chopstick method. So Michael, I'm going to have you just inspect these and make sure that there's no sleight of hand going on. These are dry wooden chopsticks. Perfect. Now I'm going to have you insert one in each of these pepper plants and go ahead and just all the way down is fine in the corner. Perfect. This trick's going to take about 20 minutes, so we'll come back to this here shortly. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. So moving into dissolved oxygen. Who knows why oxygen is important in the soil, in the root zone? Absolutely. Yeah, the leaves need carbon dioxide, the roots need oxygen to perform their functions. Any other reasons oxygen is important down south? Microbes, thank you. Yeah, we're trying to promote the development of aerobic bacteria. And by definition, we're going to need oxygen down there to produce that. Does anybody know what happens if there's an absence of oxygen in the soil? What can that lead to? What was that? Anaerobic bacteria. And these are the ones responsible for the bacterial and fungal diseases that nobody wants to deal with. So again, oxygen is super important. The goal is to get at least 8 parts per million in your water. And you can achieve that very quickly with an air stone. Just remember, as soon as you pull that plug, most of those bubbles are going to rather quickly dissipate. So you want to pull that plug right before watering, or keep that oxygen pump going the whole time if you have an irrigation reservoir set up. can make a really good difference. There are dissolved oxygen meters available. I can get one for around $400 that requires a heating element, a stir stick, and a hot plate to calibrate. It's a little intricate, but it does a good job. And then for about $1,400 online, you can get a dissolved oxygen meter that is temperature compensated, elevation compensated, everything ready to go out the door. So it's not something I've chosen to invest in. What I've chosen to invest in is good air pumps. And so I want to go over a couple different models with y'all today. So right now, I have the most high-powered pump going. So this is the 571 GPH pump. And most of you have seen, as you've walked through the room today, the level of agitation I'm getting here. Anybody who hasn't seen it, I can have these up at the end of the class as well. But what we're looking for is a nice distribution of bubbles coming to the top and agitation. Again, I need that agitation to help prevent anaerobic bacteria from developing and to speed up the dechlorination process. So this is our highest powered pump. And there's a lot of different ways to use it. So right now I just have the barbs necked down so that I can take it from a 1/4 inch down to 3/16. And if y'all have your goodie bags handy, you might want to pull out some of the fittings here that I've given you today. So this is a little 3/16 T. Let me yank that up. So just like its name says, it's a little T, and it's got barbed ends. And this gives me options. So I can take a single outlet pump and make it a double outlet pump, or I can take a double outlet pump, neck it down, and make it a single outlet pump. I like that versatility, because when I'm brewing tea or dechlorinating water, I may have multiple buckets going at the same time for different purposes. Again, the airline is 3/16, and it is listed as an internal diameter, ID. Are folks familiar with that term from irrigation a little bit? So basically we're measuring that internal diameter so that we know what size barb will fit into it, not what would snug around it, if that makes sense. So right now I just have one pump going in here. And I wanted to show you folks the next pump down. So the one we were just looking at is about $25. And the price jump between the two pumps is pretty minimal. So I encourage people to overrate your air pump. Most pumps nowadays have a dial. So this gives me a little versatility as well, and I'll play with that so y'all can hear that here in a moment. So what I've given you all today is a 127 GPH air pump, and it has two different barbed outlets. So again, you can run two different stones to two different buckets. You can run one stone to one bucket, and any various combination thereof. So for this purpose, let's play around a little bit with just necking it down to one. And you're gonna have all the fittings you need in your bag today to play with this at home. Does anybody have one of these high-powered pumps at home, the 571 with the metal fins? Yeah, I love them. As you may have noticed, they're very loud. I have it sitting on a surface right now, which obviously increases the vibrations. So what I do at home is I take my little pump and I hang it from my shelving unit right above my composting pump. And with all air pumps, this is really important, you guys, the air pump must always be above the water line. If there's a power interruption, this tubing is going to create a siphoning effect, and that water is going to suck back into my motor and burn it out. So this always needs to be above water level. So switching to our 127 GPH pump here.
for 50 gallon?
So great question. So
Mine's much bigger, my can that one.
sure.
Is that too big?
No. Honestly, if I had 55, I'd go bigger than the 571. I'd jump into the 950 range or even the 1150 range. Sure. Now these ones with the metal fins, they don't have a dial, but there are ways to restrict air if you want to reduce it. Are folks familiar with the term path of least resistance? Air and water tend to follow that path. So anytime you can manipulate that, you can change the output. So let's hook this one up. I've got a single air stone here. This is the pump that you all are getting today. And you do have the adapter fittings as well if you want to make it a double or a single. All right. So much less volume right out the gate. This is a much quieter running pump. It's also, there's a few seats up front. Feel free to dive in here. So I'll play with this dial switch here just a little bit. So I'm going to turn it to the lowest. Who can still hear it? Yeah. Right now I'm getting a bare trickle of bubbles. This is inadequate. Again, I'm going to leave these up at the end of the class so we can all play with the air pumps. Now ramping it up to full. Can you all in the back hear that now? All right, so this is just a single, and I feel like it's doing a good job, but what I've done is I've restricted the capacity of this pump to 1 stone. So if I split it between 2 lines, I increase that surface area, increase that path of resistance. So I'll run it with 2 stones here real quick. And y'all notice too, these ends are gonna start to stretch over time. I've only been playing this for about 3 days, and I've already got a little bit of a opening here. Eventually, that will become a loose connection. You'll need to trim it off and then reconnect it. You can use zip ties if you just, are counting on automation and you won't be present to watch your devices. But that is a point of failure. A lot of times, the air pump will blow a hose, and then you're not aerating water, and you come back to stagnant water. So we'll go ahead and hook 2 up here.
And if that happens, you should get rid of your water and not use it that day.
Yeah. I mean, you can bring things back by aerating it. I'd probably want to inoculate it with some beneficial microbes, something like Bacillus subtilis that would prevent fungal or bacterial pathogens. So now I've got the 2 stones going, and I'm getting a little more surface area distribution here. Again, I've opened up 2 channels rather than restricted it to 1. So with your setups today, you guys are all going to get 1 stone, 1 line, and a T setup so that you can choke them down to 1 or 2.
You keep using the term stone. Is that the thing that was on the end of that? And I don't, sorry, I'm not familiar
No, I
with that.
appreciate that. Thank you. There's a lot of different air stones on the market. This is made out of a natural rock. They do a really good job for a couple months. You can clean them in hydrogen peroxide to help rejuvenate them and get all the organic material out of them. I do find after about 2 months of weekly tea brewing, I have to kind of throw them to the wayside. So you will replace these fairly often. There's a lot of different stones too. You'll see the blue ones for aquarium tanks. I'm not a big fan of those. The size of the dissolved oxygen molecule is much bigger, and they break very easily. And I don't know what that blue dye is, so I'm not a fan of that anywhere in my compost teas. So that is our smallest air stone.
So I've never changed mine for over 3 years. Is it
Nasty. It's not necessarily nasty if you do clean your reservoirs or do like a peroxide soak between runs. But more than likely, if you switch your stones today, you're going to get 75% more air through that. Yeah, it's so noticeable the first time you do it. It's like, oh, wow, aeration. I forgot what that looked like. Yeah, but definitely an important maintenance step. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so I'm going to go down to the smallest pump. You guys almost got stuck with this. And then I ran it as a test run, and I decided there's no way I'm going to give you guys this one. So in the industry, this pump's a little bit of a joke. It's the 44 GPH pump. It is under $10, but the next size up that I've given you today retails for $13. So for $3 more, you've tripled your air output there. Now this guy, you can neck it out to 2, but I wouldn't recommend it. Even at 1, it's pretty paltry. So we'll go ahead and plug that in. These are really designed for aquariums, y'all, like a couple gallon aquariums. Anybody hear anything? So this is our lowest setting. Rini, what do you see?
Nothing?
Yeah,
Well,
nothing.
nice calm water.
There's not a single bubble rising at the surface, you guys. I'm going to give it to you on full power now.
Oh, there goes. Oh, yeah. I was making some bubbles in those.
I would say that's okay. But we want ideal, right?
Yeah.
So I would really seriously recommend that you guys start with the 127 GPH for anything 3 gallons to about 10 gallons. And then once you jump into the 20 gallon to 55 gallon range, you really want to get into the aluminum housing with the metal fins. Question in the back?
So I have the one with the metal fins, and I usually only do 5 to 10 gallons. Is that, can you over? Is there any way over us? That's what
Overdo it.
I
There's a bit of a debate. So you could over agitate your bacterial colonies and break up their chains. You could create so much agitation you made a mess. That would be too much. But for the most part, as long as things are staying contained, and you have a compost tea sock, if it's a tea brewing scenario that's just below the water surface, maybe midway, it shouldn't get rocked by that air. But those ppm testing pens for dissolved oxygen content are really interesting if you're really into tea brewing. It's a good way to find out what you've achieved through the process. Any questions on air pumps or dissolved oxygen?
Well, yeah. So you're doing this to get rid of the chlorine
Yep.
and to keep bugs from growing.
Bad bacteria.
Bad bacteria.
Absolutely, yeah.
And since I'm using spring water, I got no chlorine.
Mm-hmm.
I already noticed it. And if I actually use the water every 2 days. I mean, I fill my thing up and that'll, every 2 days I fill it back up to get more water. Is that sitting too long? Am I gonna start getting bad bugs?
I would aerate it if you could. Also, just to increase total dissolved oxygen content for when you do deliver it to your plants. Again, it takes a little bit to build it up and then it dissipates really quickly. It can only help. Honestly, within 24 hours, you're not going to go rancid. So if you don't have access to power in the location that you're filling up your reservoir,
No, I could do that. I could give that. I just wondered,
Sure.
you know, since I don't have chlorine, but that's gonna help the bacteria not to grow.
exactly, and increase dissolved oxygen content for your administrator.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so that would just be whatever bacteria happens to be in my water.
Or ever present in the air,
Right.
landing, indeed, or dirty tools or dirty reservoirs. Absolutely. Yeah. And then for the city folks, the other reason that dechlorinating is very helpful, chlorine is very alkaline. When we look at the pH scale, things like chlorine and bleach are going to be down here in like the 12s and the 13s. Y'all have a copy of this on your handout too, so I won't spend too much time with it. Does anyone remember the proper pH range for soil organics?
6 to 6.5.
I'm hearing a lot of overlapping ranges that all sound about right. Yeah, I'd say 6 to 7 is the easy answer. I love the people that are dialing it into 5.8 to 6.2, and there are different nutrients that are available at different pH ranges, so I do recommend that people let it drift a little bit within that safe range so you can maximize or minimize different uptake of different nutrients throughout the growth season. If you're always locking in at 6.2, you're going to miss out on some micronutrients there.
Would that be for the same for both veg and bloom though?
There's a lot of debate in the industry. Thanks for bringing that up. So there's this idea that you should run pH lower in veg. And the industry rumor is that nitrogen is more available at the lower end of the spectrum. Those of you who were in my super soil class and we talked about pH a little bit will remember that those bandwidths that different nutrients are available in for nitrogen are pretty all-encompassing from about 5 to 7. So you're not exponentially increasing the uptake by lowering the amount of nitrogen, but what you are doing is locking out things like calcium and phosphorus that are critical in veg to establishing a healthy root system. So yeah, you might get this awesome explosion of vegetative green growth, but you're not going to create that healthy foundation that can sustain it.
A lower for the veg to sustain
Right,
calcium.
right.
Not worried about.
Yeah, so I mean, especially if you're using a bone meal product, a calcium product, keep it at 6 or above, or you're shooting yourself in your foot. Parts per million, TDS, and EC, we've touched on a little bit in past classes, but I just wanted to briefly remind people that if you are on well water, Constant Gardener will do 3 free water tests for you a season, and we can tell you the pH and the parts per million. We can't tell you how much of what is in there, but we can tell you if it's too much or too little. So if you come in with a well water sample at 250 parts per million, we're going to probably be talking about a reverse osmosis unit that day. That concept of hard water and soft water, I touch on a little bit in the handout. Again, I have to skip over a few things for brevity today. But there's a lot of sulfur and iron in our water tables, both east, west, and south of here. So if you have a high ppm on your water, you're asking for problems and unpredictable chemistry in your garden. So it is really important. There's a few resources on page 2 of your handout that will provide under the sink, counterfiltration systems, shower filtration systems, and different irrigation filtration systems. So that's something to think about. And then as far as different watering cans and techniques go, I just wanted to share with you guys a few things I have on hand here. I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. So I do have this one at home. I love it. It's a little over 1.5 gallons. It is by liters, so it doesn't translate to exactly 2 gallons. But this is a really nice one. My only complaint is when I fill it up, it's a lot of wrist fatigue. So be really mindful of ergonomics. If you're unhappy watering, the plants are going to be unhappy receiving it. So make sure you make it easy and ease-filled. So go ahead and pass this around. It does come with a thread-on diffuser. I'm a big fan of diffusers. It's really nice to mimic that natural rain effect. It's only a couple times a year in our region that plants just get pummeled by gallons of water at a time. That does disturb your very fragile microbial colonies, so the slower you can water, the better. Elizabeth?
I have a question, just backing up a little bit. Is it reasonable, or we have a 7 pH and 0 ppm on our water? It's city water.
Mhm.
Does that seem like believable?
It does, and it depends on what ppm meter you use to do that test.
The Blue Lab.
The Blue Lab, okay, so the Blue Lab doesn't start until 100 parts per million.
Oh.
So you likely have about 80 or 90 ppms down south on municipal water. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a few ppm kinds out there that will read to the 1 ppm. If it doesn't register on one that starts at 100, you're good. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah?
I just kind of thought about, I used to take care of a pool and spa for years, and they would let me bring in just regular old tap water, and they would do just a huge test on it.
Mhm.
pH, I mean everything, just so that I would know what I need to do when I fill up my hot tub. You could probably take just your home tap water and just take it there, and it's like this 2-sheet thing. I mean,
Oh, wow.
everything. It breaks down everything that's in the water, and I bet you they need to do it for free. I used to go to Emerald. I would just take a little thing of water in there and ask them to run it.
It's a great resource. It's so important to predict and know what's going in.
Especially for the spring water, I was thinking.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of folks get excited because they have a high calcium content in their spring or well. Fortunately, it's very rare that that calcium is a plant-usable form of calcium or the magnesium concentrations that exist. They either have to be chelated or digested down by a microbe beforehand, and we need predictability, especially in the indoor garden scenario. So just a few more watering cans I wanted to share with you guys. This is something I adapted at home. Pass that around. So this is actually the tubing that came with the 571 GPH air pump. I've got a manifold that I use with on and off valves so I can control more easily the different stones. So this ended up being a great extender. Now this is the one that I would use to water plants that are in a 4-inch pot or smaller. Again, it's really easy to overwater, underwater, and if you don't have the right tool for the job, it's a little easier to reach your goals. So I'll pass this one around. This is my favorite for young plants, clones, and starts. It's actually long enough reach that in my 50-cell insert tray for my clone dome, I can reach that center plant without disturbing the foliage nearby. And then lastly, oh, this is a fun one. Okay, so I call this the snuffleupagus. So you can make this from all components that we have here in the shop. It's very basic. All I've done is taken a 1-gallon watering can, a bamboo stake that I've cut down to size, 4 or 5 zip ties, and you'll have to find what ID tubing fits around your spout. But again, this is so helpful for ergonomics. Instead of bending over, now I'm upright. And this is so important. I can't stress ergonomics enough. If it's not fun for you, it's not going to be fun for the plants. So I'll send this around. And watch your partner with that long reach spout there. Sorry.
My eye!
And you. And then a few of you mentioned, did anyone mention hydroponics? Actually, I don't believe we have that student here with us today. Okay. So I'm not going to go into too many of these, but auto irrigation. Oh,
Just a quick question about
Yeah.
pH optimization.
Sure.
How long does it take to actually work? Because it's obviously not instant.
It definitely depends on what input you're using. If you're using earth juice crystals, they recommend that you pre-dilute. Even the synthetic crystals from GH, they recommend you pre-dilute that in a smaller concentrate, and then add that to your reservoir to speed that process up. I find that, you know, in a 25, 30-gallon reservoir, I'm able to adjust within a couple of minutes. And so I'm using a Blue Lab pH meter. Myron is another company that we put a lot of faith into for pH accuracy. And I just monitor it. You will notice, though, as different particles pass over that glass globe, you may get a little fluctuation of reading. Agitation is everything. So if I've got a, 351 GPH stir pump, just a water pump stirring at the bottom, that's going to speed up how quickly it takes that liquid lime I dropped in there to cover the entire reservoir. So it's actually pretty quick, I would say, under 5 minutes depending on the size of the reservoir. Just make sure your pen is calibrated and that you trust the results. Anytime you get a surprise, it's a good idea to recalibrate or come see us with the pen to troubleshoot it. So obviously hydroponics, auto irrigation setups, there's a lot of different ways that folks can go. I will say hydroponics kind of died about 3 years ago in Lane County. Folks realize now that the cost of the hard goods, the plastic, the timers, the pumps, the chillers are not worth the end result. It is really fun though for the hobbyist, and we do have a few students who attend other classes that do play around with hydroponics. Tricky to achieve 100% organics in hydroponics, that's probably your biggest limiting factor. There are ways you can experiment with different mediums, different granulated fertilizers, aquaponics, and some water soluble and water stable organic inputs to achieve that, but definitely not for the beginner. I wanted to touch really briefly on Blumont systems. Has anybody heard of this? Okay, if you're interested in this, please tap me at any time in the class. I'm good friends with the rep. Basically, this is a system for organics to automate thicker organic nutrients like the bone meal Herculean harvest product out of Nectar for the Gods. So the way it works is you get this little carrot. Can everybody see that little orange? So that's a ceramic carrot that goes in each pot, and it determines the moisture content of your soil. And then there's two different feeding lines. One is running water, so it's continually hydrating your medium. And then the other line is made out of surgical tubing, and it's a thicker ID at a 1/4 inch. And that will send your bone meal into a dosatron, which is a nutrient mixer. You set the dial for how strong you want that concentration to be diluted to. And then it talks back to the Blumont system and then delivers nutrient on your pre-programmed regimen. This works on both the small home scale, and it's awesome for scaling up for commercial production. And I've seen this in effect. Nectar works with Blumont, and the main benefits are you're no longer using your nutrients to hydrate your soil. You're pre-hydrating your soil, and then you're coming behind that with the nutrient that they need at more frequent, shallower intervals. So you're still promoting a deep root system that'll go to the bottom of the container. You're providing it with frequent nutrition so that you can really push results. At the same time, you're minimizing your fertilizer inputs. So this is a really neat program, and again, it works for both the small and large scale. Of course, I think hand watering is the best. Nothing beats a gardener's intuition, you getting your hands in the soil, and like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, just actually getting down there and testing and feeling. So I want to talk a little bit about different ways to determine whether or not your plant is ready to get watered. Has anybody heard of the lift pot technique? Yeah? All right, can you give us a quick overview? It's very complex.
Just lift the part before you transplant it to the seed.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the response was you lift the pot and then you get a gauge of its weight. And then I would add that you gauge that in comparison to another container of a different moisture content. So I'm going to send this around. These are two really good examples. So this one is fully hydrated freshly this morning with dechlorinated water. This one has been drying out for about 3 days. So I'll go ahead and send that around, and you should notice the difference. It's very, very dramatic. So start to get used to the weight of your plants. Pick them up when they're wilting. Pick them up when they're saturated. Pick them up right after a heavy feeding. Pick them up right after a heavy flush. And this will give you some basis for comparison for noticing the different volumes and weights that your containers get. So we'll let those shoot around just a little bit there. So are they thirsty yet? What are your biggest indicators? What do y'all look for? Wilty leaves. Yep. And do you know where that usually first expresses itself? So on the lowest leaves. So what I'll notice is 3 or 4 days after a good watering, the lowest canopy leaves. We've got this pretty well cleaned up on the under canopy, but generally there would be some lateral branches or leaves down low, and those are usually the first to just gently droop. And then depending on the size of the container and the age of the plant, you'll watch that progress up the stem. So that's what you're looking for, is those lowest 2 leaves dropping. That window is small though, so I don't necessarily encourage you to look for that and wait for that unless you're always at your garden 24 hours a day, because that window will drop really quickly and then the whole plant is droopy. Now, I can bring this plant back from wilt. I can use things like B vitamins, yucca, things that help with environmental stress, and we can get a bounce back. And to be quite frank, it is easier to rescue this plant than it is to rescue a plant that's been overwatered and now has pitted, which is a bacterial infection. So always edge on the side of drying things out to the point of wilt. When in doubt, just wait a few more hours. And again, the hand watering is so important because I might have my 6 plants lined up, and plant 1 is going to dry out different than plant 6. And if I water them all the same, I'm going to really severely affect their growth pattern. So one of my favorite tricks is to grab plant labels or clothespins, and I'll come through my garden first, and I will label everything that needs to be watered. If it's really intricate and you have multiple life stages going, color coding is great. So grab some blue plant labels, grab some white plant labels. Maybe blue means water me heavy, white means water me lightly because I'm going to the coast for 2 days. But I can't encourage you enough, if you have the time, if it is a small medical or recreational garden at home, to really water each plant as a unique individual. And you'll find that you get a lot of return at the end for following that process. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I'm sorry, with the overwatering disease, what was that called?
There's many. Pythium, Phytophthora, Fusarium. There is some debate as to whether or not Phytophthora actually expresses itself in cannabis. The ones we usually think of are Pythium and Fusarium. Pythium is damping off.
Oh.
Have you guys ever seen when the little seedlings get brown and pinched off at the base of the soil? Yeah, that's root rot. That's fungus. Yeah. Pardon? Overwatering, too much humidity? Absolutely.
Did you talk about the moisture meters, or are you going to?
So I will touch on this real briefly. Thanks for bringing them up. Unless you're spending over about $50, $75 on a moisture meter, I don't encourage you to invest in one. We sell them. We sell them kind of as a joke, and I warn everybody before they go out the door. I put a moisture pot in a pit with root rot, and it told me to water it. So I don't trust them. But again, there are some good moisture meters out on the market. Control Wizard is a good one. Some of them are multi-function, so they'll do pH, parts per million, and moisture in the soil. But I do encourage you to utilize that tool in addition to your observation skills and your intuition, and then let science and intuition intersect. So you can kind of back up what you're already seeing. Absolutely. Thanks for touching on that.
If you did end up getting some sort of root fungus or whatever from overwatering, I'm sure it'll have something to happen. What do you do? Did you say?
So the first thing I would do is dry the plant back out to the point of wilt if possible, because most of your remedies are going to be water delivery, and then you're adding more water to the problem. There are some powders that have pretty inert carrier ingredients. Forge is a streptomyces subspecies that works really well for fungal infection, bacterial infection, and it's carrier sugar. So I would have no problem top dressing with that and scratching it in, and then hydrating it with a spray bottle to conserve water and prevent adding more water to the problem. You could also do that with products like the Foliar Pack by OG BioWar or the Root Pack by OG BioWar. Their carrier agent is talcum, which is basically a calcium carbonate source. So there'd be no problem with lightly dusting and scratching that in as well.
What one's that called?
Foliar Pack
Foliar Pack.
and
Is that by BioPack?
OG BioWar. Yep, right there up top in that.
Oh, cool. Okay, so there's a bunch of different things that we can do for that kind of thing to keep us out.
Yes. I will say there's a point of no return.
Where is that?
You'd have to bring in some pictures for me, and I'd do my best.
All right. Thank you.
But yeah, so many variables, your environment, how quick is that container drying out? Is it on a cold cement floor in a garage in the winter months? You know, there's a lot of factors. But yeah, there's a lot of biological controls that can be very effective. The goal is to aggressively inoculate so that you outcompete the bad guys. If I send in 100,000 good guys and there's 20,000 bad guys, I'm probably going to win. I just have to make sure I release them at the correct time.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to do just a little more hands-on here with some watering techniques. So I mentioned to y'all that I really like to water. Are the little starts made their way around? Oh, thank you so much. I like to water low and steady, and I like to water deeply and infrequently. So I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit what that looks like.
But isn't there a medium between that? If you can water whatever sitting and drying for 6-7 days and that's not good for example.
If they're wilting and starting to suffer, you mean? Or?
No, if you overwater, like you said, you water deeply.
Yes, yes. We're going to do a demo at the end about a larger container, and if I don't touch on it, remind me, okay? That's a really important one. So with small plants, I find this is where a lot of people make the mistake. So let me grab 2 dry guys here. So if you have time, and you can build this into your regimen, I like to have a stool or a bucket handy. I like to have some entertainment or diversion or another project that I'm working on. And I like to line all my plants up in a row. And I start with the first one, and I give them just a little sip. And then I go down the line, little sip, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then I start back again at number one. So I just want to show you a little bit how that moves through the soil. So let's say, all right, I'm gonna start with a pint here. So if I come through and I'm in a rush, because I want to get home to the family and dinner, and I just come through here and I just splash. I've puddled up, I've puddled up, I've puddled up. And then I'm gonna go on with the rest of my day. I'm gonna collect that water in the bottom here and show you the difference between the two. Now if I come through really slowly, on this guy, I can force a lot more water and a lot more nutrients in this plant. So I'm going to give it just a small circular drink here. I'm going to stop there. And then I'll hit plant 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll come all the way back again to the beginning. You're going to notice a number of different things here. Even saturation is key. If you have a good cocoa fiber-based soil, you probably have pretty good water retention and permeability. However, if you're in a peat-based soil, who remembers from our last class the hydrophobic nature of peat moss? So it's actually repelling water molecules away from it. So in order to actually grab and retain that water, you're going to have to water evenly and slowly, and I would recommend that you use something like Hygea's Hydration. This is a yucca extract product. It basically makes water wetter. So it's an emulsifier, wetting agent. It'll help things stick a little bit, especially your pest control products as well. So if I come back through, and I give this guy just a nice little rinse, and let that drop. So basically, for those of you who can't see, I'm just creating the smallest little puddle in a circular ring, trying to avoid hitting the crown directly with the water, and I'm going to let that drop. Now on this guy, always empty your saucers, obviously, before you run off to dinner with the family. Now, if I cut this plant down in half, good chance I have a huge dry pocket right in the middle. And that's usually the crown, the root crown, the main transport and water transport roots. So if I haven't evenly hydrated that, I could come back to a wilted plant, even though I thought I did my best, splashing water on as quickly as possible. So we'll keep going here, and you'll notice I still don't have a trickle out the bottom. And when I'm watering small plants, I do want to get about 5 or 10% runoff out the bottom. Some folks shoot for more, like 20 or 30%. I do feel like at that point you guaranteed even penetration, but you just wasted 20 or 30% worth of your nutrient out the bottom. So you just want that slightest trickle. And if you know that you've done it very slowly and very steadily, you can trust that trickle. Now in the case of the first plant, you guys saw I got that trickle right out the gate, and that would have been my signal that I'd hydrated the plant and moved on. But in reality, I'll have that big dry pocket right there in the middle. So my little can here too is about a pint of water. This is my third pass, and I'm just starting to get a trickle out the bottom. So instead of pushing 2 ounces of water through that plant, I've now pushed between 8 and 10 ounces of nutrient through that plant. So if the goal is aggressive liquid fertilizing, you can still achieve that through shallow watering, but if you've left that bottom of the container dry, you've killed off a very important part of that root system. So slow and low whenever possible. Any questions on that technique? It's pretty intuitive, but when we get in the grow room and we look at the clock, it's sometimes hard to keep on track with that. Is this a technique anybody else uses?
I mean, I do, but I use a hose, actually. I go through sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times, always 2. But I still use a hose. And every time I try to get one of those sprinklery things, they always die. So
They always, oh, the unit dies.
yeah, like I have a pump. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that? Yeah, obviously when I said hose. So You don't like that though, you're saying it's too much.
I love how fast it goes. But what I've noticed is
But you can make it go slow and go several times too, and then also, I don't have the ring thing, but,
the diffuser definitely adds a lot of time to your maintenance program. I think that's why a lot of people skip that step. You can make it as simple though, because I know sometimes the sprayer heads, especially with nutrient, will clog. You can get an inline valve. We sell plastic ones. You can buy one with a nice brass fitting on it at the hardware store, and you can reduce or increase that flow. So I can restrict it dramatically and still achieve more of a trickle effect, and then I can turn it off between plants, so I'm not wasting or making a mess. That works really well for more of a larger watering scenario.
yeah, like in a 15-gallon pot or something.
Yeah.
But even so, I noticed that even sometimes at 3 weeks, maybe I'm totally wrong, but in the bloom onion, I don't necessarily put in a 15-gallon watering.
Almost in a 15-gallon pot? How many times a week?
Almost every day.
Almost every day?
Every 36, almost every day.
I'd also
Every
have
other
to.
day?
I'd also have to probably ask you about 15 more questions
Okay,
about your
sorry,
lighting,
sorry.
your temperatures, your humidity, and
I didn't mean to
the
do that.
soil medium. No worries, no worries. I hate answering the
No,
question with the
it's
question.
There's no way.
There's so many variables.
But I was just mostly saying that, yeah, I go around a couple times, but I do use a pump.
Okay.
So that's not really still like hand watering to you, does it?
No, and I'm not opposed to that with restrictions or with a diffuser. I use a lot of bokashi and a lot of mycorrhiza, and they tend to hang in the upper strata of the soil. And I have a, what do you call it, little devil, those sump pumps, and it pushes some serious water, and I know I'm disturbing those colonies. So very important, if you can, to build in that slow practice. And for me, I'm very OCD and very like goal oriented, so I have to sit there for 30 minutes in water, I get a little frustrated. So like I said, I'll have a trimming project going on in the back, or I'll be mixing up the next reservoir for the next room, some ways to build in that space and that ease. Yeah. And that's actually a good segue here. I want to talk a little bit about different water timelines. So there's a lot of different recipes out there. How many people in the room use Nectar for the Gods? Awesome. So Scott Ostrander, our founder, he recommends basically this top one right here. Excuse me, second one down, feed, forgive me, third one down, feed, compost, feed, flush. So what we're doing there is we're aggressively feeding. We're incorporating a lot of microbes and enzymes throughout that week's watering so we can help break down and digest and make things more available. And then we end with that flush. And can anyone define flush for me?
Like more than the volume than normally to the water. Flush it out probably twice.
Absolutely, yeah. Twice as much is a really good indicator. Basically, the rule that I go by is I want 50 to 80% of what I put in to come out the bottom. And that generally takes 2 to 3 times as much water as you normally use. We're going to do a little demo on that today too, because I find that flushing is an area that does cause a little bit of confusion for some folks.
And the flushing here is just water.
Great question. So what I've learned in my experience with flushing is that fresh water alone can hypermobilize things like salts, and then you drive them right into your vascular system. So I prefer to use something like a calcium or sugar that'll grab onto that sodium molecule. Anyone who's taught this long enough knows when in doubt, flush it out through the Herculean Harvest bone meal product. So this contains high concentrations of calcium phosphate, and calcium phosphate has the ability to grab onto other molecules, pull it into its orbit, and because of its molecular weight and because of your heavy flush, it evacuates the container. So fresh water alone can often hypermobilize salts, and I've seen a burn effect afterwards, especially in a synthetic garden. I think that's where you need to be a little more concerned. But of course, in the organic scenario, folks are still dealing with salts. Does anyone want to take a guess at where those salts are coming from? So I'm not using any nitrates from a synthetic bottle. Yeah, botanic is a tricky one too, you guys. I feel like the marketing is a little misleading. They do put on the front organic-based plant food. If you turn the label around, you won't see anything or hear anything that sounds chemical. I do know that there are some chemical pH stabilizers in that product, and those would contain salts. So yeah, hidden inputs, like a pH adjuster. That would be a way that you might be bringing salts into the garden.
Do salts just come out of the bodies?
The bodies?
Is it sort of like, just byproduct of
It is a byproduct. It's a byproduct often of your cocoa fiber breaking down. So as microbes are chewing on that, they're releasing organic acids, and they're also releasing potassium and magnesium salts. So those will build up even in an organic container. So they have to be flushed out. I have another slide here in a minute. Basically, my maintenance schedule is every 2 weeks like clockwork. And I've watched this go wrong on my houseplants even, where I'll let 3-4 months go by. And of course, my houseplants get the 5-part advanced nutrient nectar line. So I get a lot of bone meal buildup, and I get a lot of salt buildup and breakdown from that cocoa fiber. And what I usually see first is little brown tips, and then I'll see little brown splotches, mid-level or lower level canopy. And that's a trigger for me that I've got a salt buildup and I need to flush it out. You get that 50 to 80% runoff. Week, 2 weeks down the road, you're seeing brand new growth come back. And bounce back actually happens pretty quick. So,
Do you use Aphrodite extraction to flush out with everybody's service?
do I use the Aphrodite? It can only help. That's another great example of a sugar source. And what I like about the Aphrodite product is it's sucrose, glucose, vitamins A, C, and E that have been pre-digested through enzymes and microbiological activity. So it's available to the plant. Where if you pour cane sugar or molasses, that's not a carbon source that the plants can necessarily take up. And it can also damage or smother some of your microbial colonies. So Aphrodite is a great way to go. It is one of our most expensive products in the line. So I'd say save your buck. Save that for like the final flush, the last 2 weeks, and use the bone meal for your regular maintenance flush. Because remember the volume of water it's going to take to achieve an 80% runoff.
You said there's a buildup in your house plants and flush it with
We're going to talk about the bone meal pancake at the end. I'll clarify that. Yeah, I hope we can squeeze it in. I just want to touch on a couple other products in the market. GH makes something called Flora Clean. Botaниcure's flushing product is called Clear-X. Read your labels and talk to your reps. This product used to be sucrose up until a couple years ago. Now it's citric acid. And I have not seen citric acid produce the flushing results that I need. So I can't encourage you guys enough to look for a calcium phosphate source or a pre-digested sugar source for all of your flushing needs.
Would you say that a lot of the things that happen in the organic model also happen in the synthetic blend models too, right? It seems like
Things like pH
done both.
fluctuation, salt overload, there's a lot of overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're these plants and they're doing this stuff. So it's happening in early organisms.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to just move on real quick and be mindful of time here. So I just wanted to flush out a plant with y'all real quick. So especially when it's a smaller container.
You can guys look at the stick that you put in there.
We'll get back to that.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
give it a few more minutes. All
But
right.
it's been watered now.
We're,
It's down there on the one you wanted.
oh, is that right? Okay.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
No, where's
But the
those?
other one's not. What happened to the other one?
it's right there.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so we should be good. All right, thank you. That'll give me,
Comparison.
well, actually, will you tell me which one feels like it's ready for water? Yeah, so you can still tell the weight difference. I think we'll still be okay. Thank you. All right, so real quick on flushing. So I want 50 to 80% runoff out the bottom of what I put in.
Is that a slow water process too?
Ideally. Yeah, especially that breaking that surface tension when things look like the Sahara Desert and they're very, very dry and crusty. Yes. So we got about an ounce of water here. So I'm going to go low and slow. Let's try to push this through here. I'd say I have a little heavier hand with a flush than I do with a regular watering. I am looking for way more than a truckle hair. So when I tell people to flush their plants indoors, like, there should be a mop, there should be a shop vac, you should be making a mess. And I know this can be very difficult to achieve. There's a couple different ways you can do things like elevate the plants on an inverted saucer so they're never sitting in that wet water. You can use a shop vac to evacuate the water. You can use a turkey baster or a syringe to pull it out.
Kind of related, kind of not. When I flush, is that gonna flush out all my nematodes?
Ah, so it depends on what soil you're in and how quickly it drains. For the most part though, if there is a food source for them, they should be busy parasitizing a fungus gnat larvae. Because they only hang out in that top 3 or 4 inches, it would take a lot of flushes, and they are mobile, so they may get displaced somewhat, but they'll be able to find where food is again. Yeah. So yeah, with the flush, and I'm glad you mentioned that earlier, you don't want to go super fast or you'll hit that same issue of a dry pocket in the middle and all your water runs straight down the sides. And this is especially problematic in the cloth pots behind me. They tend to pull back from the soil when they dry, and so a lot of it will run right down the side. And you'll even get a little beading on the outside and think that you've achieved the goal. But if you take your finger near that core, you'll notice that it's still very dry. So get hands-on. I can't encourage that enough. And in a larger container, like a 7 or 10 gallon, I would want to be able to put my finger about 3 inches deep, feel a little bit of moisture at the tip, but everything else feels brown and fluffy and dry. And that would be a good time to rewater.
Maybe you're gonna get up on the slate with the bone meal pancake thing, but with flushing, how much herb would you use?
Tablespoon per gallon.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, keep it economical. You won't achieve a much greater effect by using more. Dottie.
You know, you've got to plant in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Volume, the best way to tell if you're flushing enough volume of water in the...
If you can collect it. Now in the ground, in a pit, that's pretty tricky.
Right.
So what I would do is grab a trowel or a cultivator or something and then come about halfway between the trunk and the perimeter of your pit and then dig down about 6 to 8 inches. The first time I did the trowel test with my garden hose, I was shocked. I was out there for 30-40 minutes, thought I'd done a great job of penetrating the soil, put my trowel in, yank it back, and I've watered 1 inch. So get hands-on, get that trowel in there, get your finger in there and pull it back. A lot of folks are really scared to spike stakes through their root ball, bring out or dig out a core sample for me to do a parts per million test on. I just want to remind folks that roots are very resilient, very, very resilient. And every time I shear one off, in effect I've pruned it. Now I have 2. And those are the fine, beautiful little feeder hairs that help grab and transport nutrients. As long as you don't damage more than, say, 5 or 10% of that root ball, you shouldn't see a stress response.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been very intimidated of like stabbing them, even with bamboo things to spread them out or whatever. I'm always like, no.
Right. Right. No, it feels
So glad
scary.
you said that.
Yeah. And when we do our transplanting class again this year, you'll see me rip open a root-bound root ball, and people freak out
I always
when I do that.
whenever
Yeah.
I'm transplanting.
It's really important. Yeah, indeed. So I just want to capture some of this water here. So again, I put in 32 ounces. My goal is to get at least half of that out, right? Let's see what we achieved.
I have a few left. Looks like
Oh. Look at that. Cool. So that was probably an 80% flush right there. That's what it takes to grab those salts with calcium and get them out of your water. So I achieved 24 ounces out of 32. That is a thorough flush. If I get that 10 to 20% trickle out the bottom, all I've done is move all my salt to the next strata down. You need to get that out by evacuating it. And I was talking about that inverted tray setup here. So what I like to do is grab one saucer, invert the other, and put my little guy right on top of it. That way I have easily 1.5 inches, 2 inches of standing water that will never get sucked back up. I think one of the places a lot of people go wrong with their flushes is they get that heavy runoff, it sits in the saucer, and then it sucks all that salt right back up. And you've wasted your bone meal, and you've done nothing. And you may have oversaturated your plant with water, and as someone mentioned earlier, plants can take quite a while to dry out after a heavy, heavy flush, especially if you're in a 65-gallon pot.
So you use a DHU, right?
A DHU will definitely speed things up, making sure you have adequate light. So if you're running things at 600 watts, maybe spike it to 1,000 to help dry things out a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of ways you can manipulate the environment if you've overwatered a plant.
Matters.
Yeah, lift it up off the concrete, put it on some sort of a warming pad. There's lots of things you can do.
What about in 45-gallon pots? I mean,
You're going to need a shop vac.
yeah, but I mean,
Outdoor.
outside, sitting on the ground. I mean, are you saying that you shouldn't put your 45-gallon pots on the ground?
On Earth or on
Yeah,
concrete?
Earth.
On Earth with good drainage, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can't see the water coming out.
No.
That's the problem.
I'd encourage you to get a pallet if possible, or something smaller. You could invert another pot, something to just give it a little bit of lift height. That way you can actually see the evacuation. Yeah. If you do have a firmer base, like a patio, a lot of people will get those casters. It's just like a little X with 4 wheels on it. Those are awesome. I love them. I've also seen people do that inverted setup on a caster. So now it's mobile. I can flush this area. If I really want to go gung-ho, I can plumb this out with a drain valve to an exit line. Again, make it really easy for your system, because if flushing is a 6-hour endeavor in your garden, you're not going to want to do it twice a month. And I'm encouraging very strongly to do that, because I see it time and time again at that 2.5, 3 week mark. Salts build up, tips start to burn. And again, the goal is smoothness in our transitions and an even keeled nutrient delivery. And if we have these spikes and valleys of different levels of nutrient and moisture content, we're really stressing out the plant. All right, so let's go back to those chopsticks. I think we're going to be okay. So Michael, I'll have you pull out, and again, which plant felt lighter to you? Which plant probably needs a little water? All right, will you pull that one out for me? Now I bet we got a little color change because Erika watered it today. A little up top, right? How's it look on the bottom? Sure. All right, now let's compare it to this one.
Little at the very bottom as well.
Okay. So what we're looking for is a color change. So when the wood wicks the water from the soil, you're going to see it a little darker in color. What else do you notice about the chopstick itself? And of course we're handling them, so that might change a little bit. Yeah. Does anybody remember the toothpick trick for baking a cake?
Oh yeah, sticking on.
Yep, comes out clean, it's ready, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's the reverse in this situation. If it comes out clean, it's dry. If it comes out with soil clinging to it, more than likely you just hydrated it. So for the purposes of this demonstration, you do need about 20 minutes without added water after the initial set point. But I use this often for my houseplants, especially if they come in nursery soil that I'm not as familiar with, and the dry out times and the color and the texture can sometimes throw me off. Just putting that chopstick in there and looking for that water color indicator change can help out a lot. So between lift the pot and the chopstick method, and then getting in there with your finger, again in a larger volume container, I want to be able to have this whole area dry, about 3 or 4 inches down. And that's going to really cut back on fungus gnat larvae, overwatering issues, displacing oxygen. Because again, if you flood or drown a plant, you have displaced that oxygen, and now you're encouraging the development of bad bacteria and fungi to grow in your containers. Any questions on the flush or the chopstick? I do want to round my bases and hit these recipes real quick. So these are also on your handout. These are just some recommendations. Of course, there's a lot of considerations. If you're on a budget, feed water, or if you're putting super soil type practices into place, you might be able to just do water and tea every single time. So there's a lot of way to mix it up. You can talk to us here at Constant Gardener, and we can give you some really strong recommendations about what watering recipe will work best for your needs. So definitely keep that conversation open.
If you're doing any of those things, that's a lot more feeding than I do. I feed once a week and water twice, and because that's how it seems to work with my plants. And if I were to feed every other time I water fed, would I feed the same amounts of nutrient each time?
Depending on your goals. So with a lot of organic liquid fertilizers that are low salt, like the nectar lines,
That's what I'm using.
you could feed every single day
With the
as
full,
with a full nutrient line, with a nice 5 to 10% trickle out the bottom. Or if you're using your more frequent shallow watering technique, you could do that every single day as long as you flushed every 2 weeks like clockwork. Because again, you're not going to burn. There's no chemical salts. The plants will take as much as you can give them. There is a point of saturation you would have to consider if you already supercharged your soil with other amendments. Then we'd have to have a deeper conversation. But it's a no salt calcium based nutrient line with low nitrogen, so they'll take it every single day. You will get that buildup, and you do need to flush it out every 2 weeks, like clockwork.
does that mean they're gonna be that much better than because I fed it once a week?
So if you fed me once a week, I'd be grumpy. If you fed me 6 or 7 times a week, I'd be a lot happier and a lot healthier. But again, if you've supercharged your soil, you are in effect feeding them every day. And by adding microbial teas to the picture, you're speeding up that process of breakdown. And I just want to check in with folks real quick because we are a little past our initial hour. Of course, we have that half-hour Q&A period. If everybody's doing okay on time, I really want to do the bone meal pancake demo a little bit and then round the bases on most common mistakes.
Can I ask one question
Yeah.
about the feed, you know,
And feed.
feed, flush.
Right.
If you are taking the ppm or doing, you know, metering the ppms and the pH every time you feed, say you test it and you determine that it's wet enough and you're not going to do anything, but when you go and you think it's ready for food, you do the pH and the ppms, and if it's in the, you know, like 300 or 400s, or say 400s, do you still want to feed at that?
Like
at
a,
that point?
so you've
Like
done your
the
soil
ppm?
slurry test.
Yeah,
Is it a
after the
slurry or
slurry.
runoff? Slurry.
The slurry
Great.
test with
Okay.
1 ounce of soil and 1 ounce of water, let it sit for 10 minutes and then stick the meters in. Okay, so say your pH is good, I don't know, 6.3 or something like that, and you have like 4 something ppm. Would you still want to feed at that point, even if you had a 400 ppm?
If it was time for water and the plant looked happy and I wanted to economize, I might not.
Yeah.
If there were other dry amendments in the soil and I was waking those up with microbes and breaking them down, I might not. If the goal is production and if it was in my budget, I would feed.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought too.
Sure, and that's a valid point. The ppm scale with organics is kind of interesting. So there's 2 scales. There's the sodium chloride scale, the NaCl scale for parts per million or TDS, and then there's also the potassium chloride scale. So they're measuring different levels of different salts. Now in an organic scenario that's salt-free, it's not necessarily accurately measuring all the total dissolved solids in the container because the meter doesn't register the salts.
I don't know what happened.
So in effect, I wouldn't waste so heavily on ppm read. I would go more off of what I'm seeing the plant, how it's growing, what its rate is, if it's showing any symptoms of deficiency, and then I'd couple with that, have I fed the soil? Is there always something available? And if you're using organs only organic soil, we designed the food in that bag to run out in about 4 to 6 weeks. So if you have a week 3 plant and you're in that scenario, you can pretty much bank on the fact that you don't have a ton of nutrient hanging out in that soil. So again, it's an intersection between what's in the soil, what's convenient for me, and what's in my budget. But I can safely say with Nectar for the Gods, as long as they dried out and you weren't overwatering them, you could feed nectar every single day.
So I guess my question is, with the one shot that you recommend the last class, yeah, where would you go there? Is it a lot of salt buildup in that?
The only salt sources in the one-shot product would come from the kelp. We'd use a dry kelp meal. And that's the other place where you'll find hidden salt inputs in organics, things like kelp meal, fishbone meal, guanos. Seabird guano especially is very, very, very salty. So you gotta watch for those hiddens as well. But in the one-shot, safely, the only thing I could say would be calcium, or kelp, excuse me.
You'd still recommend feeding it every time if you could until you're over?
If it was in the budget. One of my favorite recipes is one shot plus our 5-part nutrient line. A lot of people feel like they won't get production quality yields unless they use all the bottles on the shelf, and that is not true. We created a bottle for every request a customer ever submitted to us. I want a wedding agent. Can Frank make that? I would love to have fishbone meal and increase my terpene production. Can you guys make that? So this is by no means a 13-part nutrient line. It's a 4-part nutrient line with a calcium booster. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So anybody who's using Herculean Harvest, have you seen the bone meal pancake? Okay, to the rest of you, this will be a new phenomenon. I'm going to walk this down the aisles. So, looks like the Sahara Desert on the top. I've got about a 1/2-inch layer of a combination of bone meal and suspension gum. So the way our chemist takes a bone, liquefies it, puts it in a bottle and gives it a shelf life is through a complex process of organic acid delivery for digestion, pH stabilization through organic acids, and a suspension gum. Otherwise, all that bone meal would drop to the bottom. So I'm gonna just slide this down the rows so y'all get a chance to see that there. And feel free to touch it.
If you had stirred that up like I was told you should do every time after you water to loosen up the top, would that still have happened?
No. That's a great point, Rini. If you cultivate, I don't want to poke anybody, you just come on down the aisle. There we go.
I use chopsticks.
Before I water it.
That's perfect. I don't want to poke anyone in the back, so make sure you get your eyes on it at the end. This would require a shop vac for me to actually do this demonstration today, so I'm going to talk y'all through it. And so we're seeing a suspension gum buildup. We're seeing a very thick, impermeable layer, and it is in fact impermeable. If I came here and even used my slow watering technique, I'd have a big puddle. If I was lucky, it might drop down the sides. So, like a few of you have mentioned, you need a cultivator to break that up. Now, those of you who put your hands on it, what it feels? Hard. Concrete. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't start with my cultivator at this point. This is a tool I use at home for that process. And this is good for large pots, like 25-gallon pots, 30-gallon pots. If you have a smaller pot, a fork works great. If you have strong nails, I have no problem with just using my hands to cultivate and rake. And like Rini said, if you do that every time after you water, you'll prevent that buildup big time. If I walked into my grow room and I saw this, there'd be a few preliminary steps I'd have to take to get this plant hydrated, and it is on its way to being dehydrated at this point. So the first thing I would do is grab this product, SLF 100. Show of hands if anybody's tried this before. This is an awesome product, and I don't say that very often. This is a local product from Southern Oregon. It's an enzyme product, and it also has some beneficial bacteria in it. One of those is BT, so it'll help prevent any in the soil dwelling larvae. So it's BTI, Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis. So really helpful for any kind of bugs in the soil. And it also has Pseudomonas putida, which is a phosphorus facilitator in it. So this is a great product. You only use about 5 milliliters per gallon. You can run this through those Blue Mott irrigation lines that I mentioned earlier to flush those lines out and keep the bone meal gunk from building up. It's also an awesome microbial inoculant to help diversify your soil bacteria. But what I love about it the most is it eats bone meal. So what I'll do with this is I'll come through and I'll hydrate that surface. It's going to take a really long time. I'm going to let it puddle up, but I'm not going to come through with a gallon. I'm probably going to come through in this size container with about a quart. And all I want to do is inoculate the bone meal pancake with SLF. Just for giggles, if you throw a fallen leaf on that soil surface and then come back the very next day for step 2, you're going to see a couple of things. Instead of this feeling like cement, it's going to feel spongy, like mud or clay. That leaf that you let drop and hang out in that SLF is going to already have started to break down. That is the most remarkable way to find out the efficacy of this product, is it just eats leaves within a couple of days.
I depend on this product.
Do you?
I do. And
Yeah.
I just watered my plants that were having, like, I've got these ones that the canopy's not even really developing. I call it hydration anaerobes or whatever, but, and it just like, does it deal with, you said it has that beneficial bacteria, so it does help with that, if you overwater, and you have,
It's not a root rot protector.
okay.
It's a pest deterrent or a phosphorus.
Will it still make my canopy grow back and
Yeah.
took yellow to green overnight? It's done it every single time I've been using it. Every week ever since I got it, and I just want to say, use it.
Absolutely, yeah. And the benefit that you're getting out of that product, not being a bacteria, but the enzyme, basically that enzyme is helping digest decaying anaerobic material. So it will help with rot, but on a different level. Yeah, I really believe in this product. It works so well with so many different nutrient plants. Yeah. So once I've gotten that soft, like clay, that's when I would come through with my cultivator, my spoon, my fork, or my nails, and really break that up. There is calcium phosphate in that layer, so if you want to leave it, I invite you to. There's definitely nutrient that you paid for in it. You will be able to mash it up and loosen it up. Oftentimes a top dress either of compost, a little worm castings, again, just more microbiology to help break that up, will help prevent and defend when you already have that layer. Once I've broken that up, I've taken the Sahara Desert back to a nice, clear ocean surface, and I can actually get my water to drop. And like Rini said, it's really important to stay on top of that week to week. If you just do SLF in your water on your recipe once a week, it'll help prevent that buildup. If you do it with every feeding, it'll help prevent that buildup. We often add a little SLF to our bone meal for our flushing period as well, just to help prevent that buildup.
How much is a little?
How much is a little?
You said you add a little.
5 milliliters, 1 teaspoon per gallon.
Every day? Or
We
your every
feed
day?
about 4 or 5 times a week, and the SLF goes in every single time.
That's what I'm using.
Yeah. So we don't get the buildup.
Cool, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Or right.
Sure, you can't really overdo it because there's no nutrient charge.
And then does it matter for your pH? Well, change your pH on, like, say you're pH 7 or
Have a great day.
You should just say you should just pH check, right?
pH check, I feel like it drops it, but very, very subtly.
Right.
Very
You have a
subtly.
huge spectrum here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to conclude with some of the most common mistakes we do make indoors. We talked about our flood. Oh, I did just want to mention, if you're using compost teas and compost sources as part of your flush or tea regimen, please know your source. There's a lot of municipally produced compost in our area. Pardon? So municipal would be when everybody collects their waste from a city and brings it to one facility, and then they heat it at 160 degrees and then sell your debris back to you as compost. The problem with that is a lot of chemical herbicides and pesticides are not biodegradable at 160 degrees. So I'm getting that in the mix. My neighbor's diseased rhododendrons, that's in the mix. Any kind of a contaminant, pest issue that can survive the temperatures. And again, when you're composting on a large scale, there's going to be hot spots, there's going to be cool spots. So there's just no way you can guarantee what went into it. So please know your source on composting. And there's a lot of hidden chemical inputs that we use that we need to be aware of. I mentioned in the super soil class that I got my heart about broken early spring when I checked in with my farmer that supplies all my straw for our mulch, and he let me know they have conventional spraying practices. So all that's been leaching into my bed since last year. There aren't a lot of local sources for clean straw. I wish you luck. If you do have acreage and you can grow your own green manure, I really encourage you to do that. Check in with your neighbors and ask what kind of practices they're using over the fence. Round up drifts.
Didn't you say peppermint made clean straw?
There are, I believe, some organic peppermint compost farms in our area. Yeah, I would just call them, and even if they're not certified organic, ask them their practices. There's a good chance they're not using chemicals. And I trust that, as long as I can talk to the farmer and look them in the eye. It's good for me. All right, so the most common mistakes. If y'all would turn to your last page of your handout. So we mentioned overwatering and watering too fast. Again, 9 out of 10 new gardeners, this is where they make that mistake. They overlove their plants. They want to give it as much as they can, and too much is not ideal in this situation. Less is more, as our friend in the back said earlier. Next, not dechlorinating or dechlorminating, which is a word, believe it or not. You're killing your microbes. So if you're putting one shot in your soil or other dry fertilizers, and then you're destroying the microbes that you're depending on to break it down to feed your plants, you're going to have an unhealthy plant really quick. So making sure you're taking that step. Also using chemical pH adjusters with organics. So if your pH adjuster is blue or orange, beware. If it says that it's limestone or it's organic acids like fulvic acid and citric acid, those can be good clues. Read your labels. If you have questions, give us a call. We'd be happy to answer them. Not understanding surface tension in emulsifiers. So anybody use like neem oil or organicide in their pest sprays? What happens when you add that to water?
It's on the top.
Absolutely, that's surface tension. So we need to break that with an emulsifier. Soap is a really easy way to do that. I do encourage you to use a vegetable-based Castile soap and stay away from the word antibacterial because you'll kill all your good guys, of course. Dr. Bronner's is a really gentle Castile-based soap that I feel comfortable with. But my very favorite wetting agent is Hygea's Hydration. Again, the yucca extract product is amazing at making water wetter and penetrating all those pockets. It works as a sticker to help keep your foliar sprays on the plant itself, and that'll make your delivery that much more effective. Also, agitation of all products is really important, especially with organics. I'm sure most of you have noticed that if you don't re-agitate, by the time you get to plant number 6, you got a big thick layer on the bottom, right? And that means plant 1 got cheated and plant 6 got it all. You're probably not going to burn plant 6 as long as pH is okay. But again, as different things are falling in and out of suspension, you are going to affect your pH. So agitation is key. And then last up, not watering according to different mediums or dry out times. So if I brought a plant home from the nursery that's in bark-based soil, and then I have a plant that I've used number 4 soil in, and then I have a plant that's in ocean forest for my buddy, all 3 of those are going to dry out differently. So it's really important that you understand your medium, the hydrophobic or hydrophilic nature of each input, and the results on the back end. So please water each plant as the individual that it is. And I would like to open it up just to any follow-up questions at this point.
Does that agitation help aerate too? Shaking your nutrients in a gallon jug, does it help get air into the roots?
Absolutely, yeah. Every time I'm stirring that in, a lot of people don't even use an air pump, they'll just use a water pump for that. Now you probably won't achieve the same concentration of dissolved oxygen, because there's undissolved oxygen, those big bubbles, like if you were to blow bubbles in a pool with a straw, and those bubbles would come to the surface and explode, those aren't going to hold or retain in the solution. So the finer the size of the bubbles, the better.
You mentioned
It's a really good way to bring in organic acids and enzymes and microbes that'll help break things down, absolutely. If you were to do that upon that recipe of feed, feed, compost tea, feed, feed, flush, I'd still recommend that you flush, because now you're feeding aggressively. But if you have super soil and compost tea, I would probably go to at least once a month bone meal flushes for your salty inputs like seabird guano, bat guano, and
On the compost tea, do you have the pH now?
great question. Next month is going to be our compost tea dialogue, but just to give you a quick answer today, I do. So when we are fermenting material, a lot of organic acids are produced and our pH starts to plummet. I brewed a bokashi anaerobic ferment last summer that came out at 3.2. Now from the reading I've done, that should be safe to directly apply to plants. Anybody who's ever drinking kombucha, you may know that that's an acidic formulation, but when it hits our gut, the bacteria convert it into such a form that it alkalizes our bodies. So it's kind of like that. Of course, pH adjustment should always be done slowly and smoothly and never outside of the ideal range. So for that reason alone, you should adjust it between 6 and 7. I did test it on a really big garlic patch, and everybody loved it, and there was no tip burn or any kind of pH fluctuation. But again, I'm trying to maintain an even keeled pH in that zone. So if last week it was 7 and this week it's 3.5, I'm gonna have to adjust for that somewhere on the back end. So I do, what I would do is pre-dilute your compost tea. So if you're using it at a 1-to-1 ratio, or it's bokashi EM1 and you're doing it at a 1-to-100 ratio, get it to the correct dilution rate first, and then go ahead and add your pH up adjuster. It is true that as I pour the concentrate through the reservoir and it connects and touches with different bacteria, there may be a loss. But I would say it's a very, very nominal loss, and you'll achieve more benefits by bringing your range back up into the proper pH range. But stay away with anything that says potassium hydroxide or phosphoric acid or is orange or blue. These are all warning signs that these are chemical, and more than likely they will contaminate or kill the entire reservoir. Where the and the organic boosters will be a much more gentle way of achieving that. You're welcome.
We usually just mix our nutrients up the same day that we water. Would it be better to mix them up and then let them aerate, for a day before?
Really good question. It depends on your nutrient regimen and what products you use. Nectar should not be circulated. So anything you use from nectar should be used that day.
Okay, got it.
There's a lot of additives in our line that are reservoir stable, and I've had a lot of fun over the years playing with half nectar organic hydroponic production, and you can tweak with it and you can play with it and you can get it there. But I will say that Medusa's Magic, Gaia Mania, not awesome in a circulating system. They're going to fall out. and then it's really prone to anaerobic bacterial growth because there's a lot of food in there that they want to eat. Bone meal works, but it's going to gum up all your lines. So there's definitely ways we can talk about automating. Some folks will do the reservoir of all the additives and then have their worker bring in Medusa and Magic at the last minute. But I would say if you aerate your water in advance, then add your nutrients, you're still achieving your dissolved oxygen content.
Can you use kombucha for pH down?
So I had a couple people play with that over the years. Yes, you can. It would be unpredictable because you're culturing a ferment at home and we haven't analyzed it. So we don't know what the dominant species are. It will lower your pH. In a pinch I've used a lemon, in a pinch I've used vinegar. To go up, I've used soap and I've used I wouldn't use salt, that's very alkaline as well, but you can use a little bit of soap. You could also use a little bit of baking soda to achieve that value. And that's just a potassium bicarbonate product. Well, excuse me, that's sodium bicarbonate, so I probably wouldn't use baking soda. There's a few potassium bicarbonate products on the market that would be safer to adjust up without adding salt. And the Earth Juice product line, it uses that ingredient.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome, you guys. Well, was this as easy as you thought it was going to be, or is water a little more complex than we first thought? Yeah. It was really challenging for me to keep this under an hour and a half today, but again, thank you all so much for your attendance. You all have an evaluation form on your seat. If you would just take 1 minute, there's pens up front. These are so helpful. So many of my class topics came from you guys. So next month, the 26th, we'll be doing compost tea right here, same place. Thank you all very much. Thank you.